He was a star football player, an HBCU grad, a student activist during Jim Crow.
Marvin fought for freedom. He fought for freedom for everybody.
When times were hard here in Atlanta, as a student, when the student movement was coming along, he was on the forefront.
Dr. King would say, without the foot soldiers, you wouldn't have seen any progress.
He integrated his law school, ran a prestigious law firm.
He built one of the largest African-American firms here in the United States, and nobody gave him anything. He built it from scratch.
He was one of the major players, the barrier breaker.
Great lawyer. He made a great judge, but he's a great individual, too. He cut a wide swath.
He was bold. He was outspoken. When you're bold, most often you're truthful, and Marvin fought the fight.
He counseled a growing city, administering the right policies year after year. He then became a passionate judge.
That's kind of the legacy of Marvin. People called upon him to save us, to come and restore justice, to come and protect what we have built. And he has done that his entire career and his entire life. And his is a story that people who aspire to public service, they need to know it.
The ultimate coalition builder. While he is unapologetic about his community and his blackness, he is able to reach across racial lines, ethnic lines, and also political lines in order to get things done.
A fighter, an advocate, a mentor, a litigator, an activist, a fixer, a teacher, a guide. But above all, Marvin Arrington Sr. was a leader, a natural-born visionary who helped galvanize a mid-sized southern city into an international cosmopolitan community.
Atlanta became the Black Mecca because of the leadership of Marvin Arrington Sr.
How Atlanta got to be the Atlanta that it is today, it's because of the blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice, and service of political giants like Marvin Arrington Sr.
He was a rainmaker par excellence. If he was a man ahead of his generation when it came to thought processes and ideas, he's an understated leader in Atlanta whose story has not been told.
He's been impactful in a number of ways in regards to Atlanta's infrastructure, transportation, any and everything you can think about, and really making sure that the city of Atlanta was well on its way to where it is now.
Marvin's vision, quite frankly, was ahead of his time. He understood where this city was going. He understood that Atlanta, as an international city, would continue to be a place where people will want to come and live and interact and pursue their dreams.
Marvin Arrington Sr. is definitely one of the architects of this new Atlanta, which really is a model for the whole world to use.
He was part of a very important transition for a major southern city. For African Americans and whites to work together post-civil rights over the last 50 years, he has a prominent place in that.
A civil rights attorney, corporate attorney, and then a judge? Come on, man. On top of being a leading politician? I mean, you can't do much more than that. He is Atlanta's Black Mecca example.
And because he was an Atlanta homeboy, Marvin was the first kind of politician you knew who ascended to a level that said that's Atlanta. That's Atlanta's own.
He should be celebrated. He was someone who people watch grow into this Atlanta icon. His name should be called amongst the great of our city. We all know the story of Dr. Martin Luther King and so many other civil rights leaders who've called Atlanta home, but for us in Atlanta, we have to remember that Marvin's name has to be called in that same way.
As the longest-serving city council president, he led Atlanta's transformation as a popular and relevant city. In the 1970s, he began working behind the scenes as a powerful voice of a once marginalized people. In the 1980s, he helped open doors with city contracts that led to a Black business boom and Black home ownership. In the 1990s, his day-to-day legislative work ushered in Atlanta's emergence as a world-class city.
Historically, he was a part of the fiber and fabric of Atlanta. He was homegrown.
He made an indelible mark on politics in Atlanta, Georgia.
Marvin became a mover and a shaker. He was driven. He was outspoken. He spoke out at the right time. He didn't shoot from the hip. He shot from the heart.
Marvin Arrington Sr. was one of the founding fathers of Atlanta, of modern Atlanta. He's helped mold and structure and provide the infrastructure for the city of Atlanta to be the booming, bustling city that it is today.
Marvin was our prime minister in Atlanta. Nothing would not have happened in Atlanta had it not been Marvin Arrington's involvement.
Marvin Arrington changed the way city government even read.
He understood the courts, he understood the police, he understood the business community. We are not immune to controversy and conflict. The reason we are functioning is we have people like Marvin Arrington that know how to deal with things.
Marvin Arrington was the lion of the Atlanta City Council, secured the Olympic Games, built out MARTA, developed the highway system in the city of Atlanta, turned us into a major convention center, turned us into a major tourism destination, developed the largest airport, busiest airport on the planet. All of those things were done by men and women. And in the pantheon of them is Marvin Arrington Sr.
Original A. Hey, shawty. This native dialect, that's just some shit that we say. I'm always on display. Outside candy coated, inside parquet. Butter, country crock when we been a corner. That bitch slick pimpin' when I run up on her. She say I make her sick, give a bitch pneumonia. I get the party started from here to California. One stop, straight drop. You know what it is? Still find my thrill in the middle of Dixie Hills. Ask me no question, I tell you no lies. They say it's greater in Decatur, but the west side is this side. Dirty, dirty. Old Atlanta. Over the breeze. Fulton County. Dirty, dirty. Georgia peaches. Grady babies. But please believe me. From College Park. Oh, nasty. To the west side. Down on Ashby. Dirty, dirty. Old Atlanta. Yeah. Old Atlanta. Old Atlanta. Nah, dirty, dirty. Old Atlanta. Old Atlanta. Home of the Braves. Home of the Braves. Fulton County. Yeah. Dirty, dirty. Georgia peaches. Georgia peaches. Grady babies. Woo. But please believe me. Yeah. From College Park. Oh, nasty. To the west side. Down on Ashby. Dirty, dirty. Old Atlanta.
Marvin Stevens Arrington Sr. was born February 10, 1941, at Grady Hospital in downtown Atlanta. He grew up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city, the Grady Homes Public Housing Projects. His father, George, was a truck driver, his mother, Maggie, a domestic worker. Although growing up with limited means, his family always pushed education on Marvin and his siblings.
He came up in the area of Summerhill. We were just average people. We were not rich people. We were people just trying to make it. We moved from Summerhill to the project, which was a great thing for us because it was better for us. A lot of people talk about the project, but the project was a good move for us.
When I was 6 or 7, my father hit the Georgia lottery, which they called the bug back in those days. It was not legal, it was illegal. And won some money, and he paid $10,000 for a house at 883 Neal Street. But man, we was something else. We had a living room, and my parents had their own suite. We had what we call a TV area, and a kitchen, bathroom, refrigerator. It was fairly comfortable for me.
I'm gonna show you about Vine City. Not then, I'm gonna show you how it is now. That's Vine City now. So you know what it was when I grew up. I had a shotgun when I grew up. I'm 83 years old, this is Vine City right now. They call it the Bluff, Lightning, Hills Avenue.
Marvin was a street boy, born in Greater Hospital, raised on the street of Greater Home.
We both grew up in poor families, loving families though. Families that wanted us to have a better life than the life they had had. So his parents encouraged him to go to school, get a degree.
Growing up in the 1940s and 50s, Atlanta was marred by Jim Crow segregation. Access to full citizenship for African Americans was limited.
The U.S. Supreme Court justices used the actual phrase of Booker T. Washington that he gave in Piedmont Park here in Atlanta, and they termed separate but equal, and they codify segregation into law as the actual way of the land. And what this does is it makes public property like private property.
Following the Montgomery bus boycott, a group of preacher activists gathered in Atlanta to strategize the next steps for equal rights for African Americans. In 1957, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. joined forces with Ralph Abernathy, Fred Shuttlesworth, Joseph Lowry, and other civil rights leaders to form the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
And Atlanta, presented that. They were the first major Southern city to integrate in 1961. I mean, what cannot be undeniable about what Atlanta is to Black folk is that real conversation around Black education, the historically Black colleges, Black economics, the Sweet Auburn District, Black political empowerment and electoral politics, Black expressive culture, and Black spirituality. With all of those institutions that were established in a particular kind of way, it's Atlanta that moves to the fore.
We took it from Birmingham. You know the history. Birmingham, Magic City and all of that, they were supposed to be the great city of the South. But Atlanta, because of that, we didn't have the hoses and the dogs and the terrible atrocities against the demonstrators in the streets of Birmingham, and Atlanta became that ideal Mecca.
In the backdrop of Deep South racism and the growing influential leaders seeking ways to curb it, a young Marvin Arrington and his fiery leadership was molded. Early on, he had set his sights higher than his upbringing showed, inspired to make a difference for his people and his city.
When you were raised in the city of Atlanta, you understand that not only is the segregation as far as white and Black concerned, is also in the school system too, among Black people. We had to work harder. We had to work harder, because, we just wanted to prove ourselves that we can do it too.
It was very difficult getting a formal education. We had books with pages absolutely torn out of chapter. You'd be in chapter 3 and pick up in chapter 5, chapter 6. Pages missing. Segregation was very difficult, hard, but impacting, and it made you study harder. Subsequently went to 3 elementary schools, not because I was dumb,
But because of segregation, I started off at E.R. Carter, I went on to English Avenue, and then I went on to A.F. Herndon Elementary School, where I had some great teachers.
The environment during that time was similar to what I experienced, just segregated facilities, segregated everything. But the good thing about it, it kept us connected to one another. And that connection, out of that connection came a lot of real friendships. And to this day, Marvin's friendships go back to his elementary, middle, and high school days. I mean, he can name them. And being the outgoing personality that he was, he actually attracted a lot of people to him.
The Arrington family unit was poor, but provided a stable and nurturing environment for Marvin and his siblings, Joseph, Elaine, Audrey, and Cynthia.
I think he's a good person because he's never given me any trouble. And that's something to say there, you know, you're going to raise a kid, and, you know, they don't get in trouble. You know, so many times young boys, they just get in trouble. He's never been locked up or anything. And, well, since he's my son, I'm not saying it because he's my son. I think he's a pretty nice fellow.
Marvin was the middle child, and I don't know if that middle child syndrome, after I thought about him, you know, middle children are a little different. He loved his mom and the whole family. They are really a strong family. One thing they do always say when they see each other, I love you. So they'll say that constantly to each other.
I can remember during his high school days when there were a group of boys, they were all friends. I think about 3 of the boys dropped out of school. I got real worried about it after they were dropping out so fast. So then I asked Marvin, I said, Marvin, are you going to drop out of school because the other boys have dropped out? He said, no, Mama. He said, I'm not going to drop out. He said, I'm going to finish high school. He said, I'm going to make you real proud of me. So when he graduated from high school, he said, I told you so. And he said, I'm going farther. He said, I'm going to college. So he went on to college.
Always an active kid growing up, a young Marvin Arrington picked up football. He would go on to Turner High School and be a star quarterback. He then earned an athletic scholarship to play at Clark College, now Clark Atlanta University. While at Clark, Marvin immersed himself to campus life. Besides excelling as a star football athlete, he joined the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity.
Really gregarious. I mean, he was outgoing. Everybody knew Marvin Arrington, popular on campus. And with Clark being a small campus, you know, it didn't take much. And being a native Atlantan, I want to give that real credit because he already knew a lot of the people who were on the campuses.
We were hungry for success. We were driven, especially Marvin. He was focused and driven. He really wanted to make something of himself.
I played on one of the greatest high school teams ever played here at H.M. Turner High School. We went 8-1-1. Great football team. Then I went on to college and played under one of the great coaches of all time, L.S. Epps. And we had one of the greatest teams in the history of Clark my junior, senior year. We went 16-2. First time, 1962, that we defeated Morris Brown and Morehouse in the same year.
On the football field in practice, Bo started off playing quarterback his freshman year. I think after that, he gained a little weight. Coach moved him to the end. The next year, he gained some more weight working on the railroad. Coach moved him to guard. And one day in practice, we needed a tackle. Tackles were either hurt or doing something else. And Coach said, legs, get down and tackle. And Bo looked over at Coach and said, Coach, I ain't playing no damn tackle. He said, you done moved me all around this field. And Coach Epps, a pretty big fella himself. Coach said, legs, if you don't get down and tackle, I'm gonna lose this size 12 in your behind. And Bo looked at him and said, Coach, and you're gonna be a one-legged football coach. He said,
he was the best halfback, running back, with them bow legs that Clark had ever had.
And it was funny, people didn't call him Marvin, they called him Bowlegs.
Bowlegs, me. Bowlegs, and that's a term of endearment, you know. I don't, you know, every time I see him, I'll say, Bowlegs, how you doing?
You know, they call Marvin Bo because he's bow-legged. And I didn't know for a long time. Everybody was calling and say, hey, Bo. And I said, Marvin. I said, what's? He said, oh, they call me that because I'm bow-legged. And, you know, it's another great example of just that spirit and that humor.
Marvin really looms larger than life for those of us who are from the city and those who came to know him. Some of them know him as Bowlegs. Some of them know him from his football days at Clark, from Turner High School. So again, you kind of hear about this legend of a guy. Then when you unfold the book of the chapters of his life, you understand really how important he is.
Marvin was thin-skinned, rambunctious, and combative. He was also very popular, engaging, and a fun guy to be around. He was also on the football team, so he was a student athlete, but he was serious about his studies.
Marvin Arrington graduated from Clark College in 1963, right at the pinnacle years of the Civil Rights Movement.
Of course, our most famous citizen is Martin Luther King. And some people like to think he's just somebody that just arrived on the scene in the 1950s. He was the third generation of Morehouse men in his family by the time that he came along. So these leaders had been in place for many years.
When we begin to talk about what Atlanta means, is there's a booming textile industry here in the city. There's a booming transportation industry here in the city, but there's also an opportunity for Black folk to receive an education. And so that sets the standard. Those institutions of higher learning and other institutions allow for the establishment of businesses that we see in what we know of as the Sweet Auburn District, with the establishment of Atlanta Life Insurance, with Mutual Savings Bank, with the Yates and Milton Apothecary, the Oddfellows Building. I mean, we see churches that are established in this area. And so that shows us the Sweet Auburn District as the Black economic arm.
Seeing the injustice of segregation all around him, Marvin, now the college graduate, was bent on making his mark to improve conditions for African Americans throughout a divided Atlanta region. He decided to go to law school.
It was during the heyday of the Civil Rights Movement, so most of the blacks who decided to go to law school back then went to law school primarily to get a law degree, to participate in the Civil Rights Movement as lawyers representing handling civil rights cases. So we were focused on becoming a part of the movement and doing what we could as lawyers to advance the movement.
The impact that African Americans have and can make when they are lawyers. I believe lawyers are social engineers. That's what Thurgood Marshall said.
Black lawyers were among the most prominent and important people in that regard. Black people got involved in politics after lawyers filed the suit. If you're going to have political power, you got to organize the people, and you got to have lawyers to file these suits. The NAACP was filing these suits, and the ACLU and some other more liberal white organizations were really doing it. So without the lawyers, all these segregated laws would still be here.
Marvin then applied and was accepted at Howard University Law School. Off to D.C. he went, but quickly into his first semester, Marvin was starting to miss home.
After our first year of law school at Howard University, Marvin, whom I think really became homesick while we were in D.C. in our first year of law school. And I think he contemplated at that time that he wanted to transfer.
That summer, after his first year, Marvin bumped into the dean of the law school at Emory University Law.
During the summer following our first year in law school, we both got jobs at the post office. We were working alongside each other. And at that time, Marvin was telling me about efforts he had undertaken to transfer from Howard University to Emory University. And at that time, there were no black law school students at Emory University. So he would keep me abreast of his efforts to get into Emory. I will always tell him, I wish you every success in your efforts to transfer, but I'm going back to Howard because I have a scholarship. We were both poor.
After much reluctance, Marvin was able to convince his friend to join him as Emory's first black law students ever.
And Clarence said to me, man, these white folks ain't gonna let us in that school. And I said to him, we'll never know until we try. And so we made formal application. And that was the beginning of Marvin Arrington's experiences at Emory University. And it was fabulous. Our whole Emory in high esteem.
I think the dean had prepared the student body for our coming. I think the dean may have told the student body that at the beginning of the academic year, we would have black students, 2 black students, would be a part of the law school student body, because we did not incur any kind of hostility that a lot of other blacks had encountered when they were the first to become black students at a previously all-white school.
Just think about the courage that it took to walk into a place where there had never been one like you, and knowing the resentment and the hatred that they must have felt. It didn't faze Marvin one bit. And it took someone like Marvin and Clarence. Clarence was the quiet one. Marvin was the one that was always talking. To be able to break that barrier.
Both Marvin Arrington and Clarence Cooper graduated in 1967.
People came from all over, and Atlanta declared itself the crown jewel of the South. And they were going to be above and beyond. And the federal government invested money in that to kind of reclaim the South. So Atlanta has had this kind of entrepreneurship. So Booker T. Washington was part of the planning for that. And Henry Grady wanted Booker T. Washington to be a part of the planning of that. They set aside their differences. And then on the other hand, at Atlanta University, you have W.E.B. Du Bois teaching. So you have Booker T. Washington on one side and all happening in Atlanta. So the civil rights movement is on that foundation. And Marvin, who lived here and grew up here, in the second and third generation here, I mean, they learned some of this just by osmosis. Some of it was taught. They learned by osmosis. I mean, they just learned it because they were here. The experience of people who have read. There was nothing about Atlanta that could say they were the crown jewel in 1895. Aspiration. So they taught aspirational thinking. You see this, you see Henry Grady do it. You see Booker T. Washington, you see W.E.B. Du Bois. Well, why can't I, Marvin Arrington Sr., do that?
In 1967, now fresh out of law school, Marvin Arrington had limited opportunities. No law firms in the city were looking to bring on black and up-and-coming attorneys.
When we came out of law school, there were no white law firms hiring black law school students. And I remember when I went to court, there were no black judges, no black district attorneys, and everything was what we used to refer to as lily white.
Marvin Arrington began working for his future mentor, Leroy Johnson, one of the few prominent black lawyers in Atlanta. Born and raised in the city, Johnson graduated from Morehouse College and got an early start as a civil rights pioneer. In 1962, Johnson was elected to the Georgia General Assembly, becoming the first black state senator to be elected to the legislature since Reconstruction.
As a member of a minority group, I'm accustomed to fighting against great odds. Now, we're not going to give up. Someone said our head is bloody but unbowed.
Marvin began working for Johnson at his law firm. These formative years for the young lawyer expanded his possibilities to making an impact.
Across the city of Atlanta, Marvin Arrington, Leroy Johnson, and others joined forces to become a part of Atlanta's best of the best.
Jesse Hill, Herman Russell, and Leroy Johnson, I mean, they laid a foundation for us, and we took off from it.
As Atlanta was beginning its ascendancy as a prominent city, tragedy struck in the spring of 1968. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis that April 4th. The city's most cherished resident and the country's civil rights hero suddenly is gone.
68 was a very pivotal year. That was a year where America was undergoing a transformational period. It was the Vietnam War, it was escalating. It was a year that Richard Nixon was elected. It was a year that Martin Luther King was killed. It was a year that Bobby Kennedy was killed.
Atlanta was still a segregated city, even though the Civil Rights Act had passed, the Voting Rights Act had passed, and people were voting in good numbers. But the mindset of the city was still that of a segregated community.
Atlanta was going through a transitional period as well. Middle-class black folks were beginning to migrate across the Peyton Wall. 4 or 5 years before that, then Mayor Ivan Allen had erected a wall, which was probably the worst period in Atlanta's history, sort of like the Berlin Wall, right across Peyton Road, to avoid any ownership by black folks coming across Peyton Road.
To see a mayor decide to put up a barricade to stop black people from coming to a certain part of town on Peyton Road is amazing that it would ever even be thought about, but that's the kind of stuff that used to happen.
And while the year was pivotal in race relations throughout the country, Marvin Arrington dealt with a major blow at home. His father died of a stroke. But Marvin Arrington used his tragedy to work even harder. He began studying for the Georgia bar. After several attempts to pass it, Marvin sensed racial and class bias with the test. He sued the Georgia bar in 1968. As soon as he passed, he quickly began his own law firm.
All the blacks who had applied, and some was graduate from Harvard, Yale, the best law schools in the country. And all of the black applicants were, did not pass the bar exam. I was upset about it. I was appalled. I just did not believe that could happen. And we sued him, and under the Title VII.
He had a really deep commitment to his community. He never, ever forgot where he came from. He never forgot the challenges that the people were facing every day in that community. He actually thought of the law as the way out of poverty, the way out of neglect, the way out of people being taken advantage of. And so he used the law to help out his community. He was a phenomenal community servant.
At first, the young attorney-to-be was not interested in politics, but 1968 sparked a new era for the next generation of leaders in the city. Marvin Arrington Sr., sensing the winds of change blowing in Atlanta, threw his name into the hat at City Hall. With little competition, Marvin Arrington Sr. was elected to the Board of Aldermen in 1969, becoming the youngest elected official in Atlanta's history.
One of the few members, African-American members,
of the Atlanta Automatic Board. At that point in time, everybody ran, all aldermen ran citywide. And in creating that sort of an arrangement, it was very difficult for African Americans to have a representative number of elected officials as a part of the body.
Marvin played a significant role with the Atlanta leadership. He was the youngest part of that governmental leadership, and bringing a perspective that we need to look forward on doing things in terms of the city council that would uplift people of color.
Raising the opportunities for Black Atlanta residents wasn't the only top priority for Alderman Arrington. He wanted to change the social conditions that put African Americans in their place for far too long.
His impact in the city was taking us through a very difficult time when there was a lot of transition, there was a lot of controversy, and he was the steadying hand. Marvin had that unique ability to bridge both business community and the street. He came from the streets, he never forgot it, and he overcame it, and he knew that others could too.
Marvin was always known as somebody who would not quit. You could be beating him from one end of the scrimmage line to the other. He was not going to quit. And he had that reputation. And that was the kind of person that they wanted to see on the old Board of Aldermen.
And so there was a period there where the council, the aldermen had to work with this new mayor and the transformation and aspiration of people, Black Atlanta. So it was an interesting period, which could have gone to destruction.
Leaders such as Marvin Arrington Sr. brought a new type of peace, a new type of reconciliation, a new type of understanding, and just he acted as a convener of the conversation.
Marvin Arrington started to change the ordinances regarding housing and various other things where government was concerned and African Americans should have been participating. Housing, banking.
He's consistently been in service to our community. Here we are, a great story, a young kid out of the bluff who come and get an opportunity to go, tough football player, get a scholarship, go to college, but come back and elected to the Board of Aldermen and start providing service to his community.
As a big sports fan and an advocate for equal rights, Marvin Arrington Sr. made a unique mark in history by resurrecting the career of one of the greatest boxers of all time, Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali, heavyweight champion of the world, was stripped of his title.
In 1966, Ali was drafted by the Army to fight in the Vietnam War. His religious beliefs prevented him from fighting, and he refused. He was then denied a boxing license in every state and stripped of his passport. For 3 years, Muhammad Ali was banned from the ring.
He's actually convicted and headed to jail, and it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court and it's overturned. And this is 3 years of Ali's life. He's at the prime of his life. And because he was deemed as unpatriotic and all of that kind of stuff, no one would allow for Ali to fight. But what happens with this is Atlanta is booming. It's a new sports and entertainment city. It is looking for different ways to showcase itself. It wants to show its downtown venues in terms of its new hotels. It had aspiration to really be a conference and convention town.
He was working with Leroy Johnson at one time when they got together with Lester Maddox and put together Muhammad Ali's first fight after retirement. That couldn't happen anywhere in any city in America, in the world, quite that way. You got Leroy Johnson, Marvin Arrington, and Lester Maddox. See?
It's Leroy Johnson and negotiations of a Marvin Arrington that is able to basically shut down segregationist Governor Lester Maddox and to allow for Atlanta to be the host of this first fight when Muhammad Ali fights Jerry Quarry in October of 1970.
All right, we're ready to go.
And the thing about this is that this would be a long-standing relationship between the city of Atlanta and Muhammad Ali.
It took behind-the-scenes maneuvering and the savvy skills of Marvin Arrington to make Atlanta the first location in which Muhammad Ali would fight.
Leroy Johnson was one of very, very few, maybe 2 or 3, black elected officials, even at the state level. But wow, was he impactful. And working hand in glove with Marvin Arrington, what else could we have but success?
You have to have your lawyers around to be able to pull off, this kind of contract for Ali to fight. But then you also have to have someone who is reputable in the community to really corral the community to come out and to support this fighter who Black America deemed as a hero, but white America saw as being unpatriotic. And it was Black Atlanta, it was Marvin Arrington's Black Atlanta that came out to support Muhammad Ali because Muhammad Ali represented the best in terms of resistance, the best in terms of defense, the best in terms of protection. And of course, he is lauded for being, a heavyweight champion of the world, but that was his smallest platform in terms of fighting. The social justice that he's able to do because Atlanta gives him a chance is something that's even greater.
4 years later, Atlanta makes a seminal mark in African-American history. In 1973, Maynard Jackson gets elected as mayor of Atlanta, becoming the first Black mayor of a major U.S. city in the South.
Never, never shall I let you down.
Our time had come, and we wanted a Black mayor, and we elected Maynard Jackson.
Back in the 70s, of course, it was, it was a rise of, let's say, a Black revolution.
The 70s was a very key starting point. When Maynard first came in and Marvin came in the 70s, late 60s and 70s, Blacks used their power to affect the economic and the social civic issues of that day. And they formed a base, and that leadership during those times, the 70s and 80s, was very key as a strong base. And set Atlanta up as known as the Mecca.
Hand in hand. I mean, it was like one was a left glove, one was a right glove. And they had a cold substance that they had to pick up together, and they did it in unison. Because Marvin was, as alderman, was very influential on that council when it was the alderman.
All the time interacting with this bright, young, very energetic alderman and then council member, because when Maynard became mayor, we changed the government structure from a strong city council form of government to a strong mayor form of government.
He and Maynard worked together. Here you got a Black city council and a Black mayor, and they worked together for the good of the Black people.
Marvin was a pioneer. Remember, there was Maynard Jackson, who kind of led the way, but Marvin Arrington kind of paved the way.
The two new ambitious political leaders went to work in improving the city from a yesteryear of a segregated provincial town to the future of a diverse, unified, cosmopolitan city. Mayor Jackson, with the help of Councilman Arrington, opened the doors for more Blacks to enter city government. By the mid-1970s, African Americans began trickling in to serve the city, some even as new police officers.
They wouldn't try to speak for the community until they listened to the community. That's where the unity was. And Marvin was part of that, listening to the community, and that generation listened and wouldn't say yes until they touched base. That's Atlanta.
After more than a decade as an influential member of Atlanta's City Council, Marvin Arrington decided the time was right to step up as City Council president.
We're going to have a people campaign. We're going to ask people to look at my track record, what I've done over the last 10 years, and ask them to support Marvin Arrington. All along, we've gone after voters, whether they're black or white, and said, we want to represent this entire community.
In 1980, he ran, and he was elected.
Marvin had a bigger idea about what the president of City Council could do in terms of being a leader in City Council and what City Council should and could be doing for the city. That was an exciting time for Atlanta because Atlanta was really beginning to pop nationally.
Marvin was an effective president of City Council, knew his chairs and knew what he wanted done. And you always had to respect Marvin's base. The only true Atlantan that did everything right here.
For many people, native Atlantans, Marvin Arrington was their go-to person in city government. He was the one they knew in city government. And he was their childhood friend, their high school classmate, their college classmate. He represented Atlanta. He was Atlanta.
Of course, council presidents can't introduce legislation, but he certainly had his own ideas about how the city ought to be run with integrity and intelligence and balance. One of the great things I admired about him was he truly seemed to be colorblind in his committee assignments and his desire for good things to happen throughout the city.
We're talking about where we want to go in this city, whether or not we can deal with the whole question of racism, whether or not we can deal with economic development, whether or not we can deal with jobs, having a good working relationship with the mayor and the council.
Everything had to come through him. If you wanted to get past, you had to go through Marvin. So Marvin, in turn, was already, him and the mayor, whatever was already was in tune with each other. So he was a flow leader, and therefore he was able to get a lot of things passed.
Nothing came before the city council that Marvin didn't bring to the city council.
He was president of city council, which at that time we called the vice mayor. Sometimes he led, and sometimes he needed to follow based on who the mayor was. But most of the time he led.
Marvin Arrington was a master tactician. Marvin taught us how to work the city council. For those who paid attention, he managed the city council with an iron fist, but nobody really got angry with him. And that's what you have to do in that position. He defined what it was. We had no other pattern, no other example of what a city council president could be other than watching him. And he did a masterful job at it.
He was politician's politician. He could be street when he needed to be, but when he was president of the Atlanta City Council, there was order. There was order. And I think that's also a part of who he is. He's a very orderly person.
Well, he had a lot of respect from the council members. When he would come in the room, people would stand at attention, so to speak. The council president is coming. He ran his meetings very well. He got to a point sometimes when they were debating a lot. His favorite saying was, "It's time to fish or cut bait."
I watched him as he led the council, and I was always impressed with two things. One is that he had command of the topics that were being presented. I mean, he had information to share. But in addition to that, he had command of his authority, and he knew how to use his authority in order to persuade both the public and the council members to consider his point of view. And he was pretty eloquent in doing that.
Early in his first term as mayor, Maynard Jackson had the vision to transform the city's airport into a major business and commerce hub. He and Marvin Arrington went to work crafting legislation that would lead to city policy on a new phase of the airport.
Atlanta is really at the center because it drew transportation. First it was the railroads, and then it was the airport. And so you could have major corporations located here because you had this airport, and the Fortune 500 regional offices can settle here.
Late Mayor Jackson's effort to create MPE, FPE, minority business enterprise, female business enterprise policies, the first significant part of which was realized with the first construction of the $500 million expansion of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport that began around 1977 and was completed in 1980. That policy was one that was really followed nationally and replicated nationally. But what it did is it created an environment where people were able to see successful African-American businesses.
In the 1970s, the Atlanta airport was a pretty small airport. Maynard Jackson knew and understood that it could be an international airport. And so one of the things that he's able to do is he's able to really get the attention, he's able to get the grants. And he promotes joint ventures, minority businesses and joint ventures. This is a part of his affirmative action. It's the brilliance of it. And I also think it's the marketing of what Atlanta is, particularly in terms of the using of Dr. King's dream as this being Dr. King's hometown and how Dr. King represents humanity. It made it very difficult for any country in the world to not want to do business with Atlanta because of that. And so what I'm saying is to do business with Atlanta and to have to fly through that airport puts you on the right side of history.
The Atlanta airport, which at that time was the largest capital project in Atlanta's history, Marvin and Maynard worked together like a symphony. They made beautiful music together. Maynard could not have achieved what he achieved had it not been for Marvin.
Stand by.
Out of all the economic development pieces that I have played a role in, I think the Atlanta Industrial Park is the most important. This is a $100 million plus project. We're talking about some 1,800 odd jobs. We've been able to talk to the businessmen involved in this particular process, and they have agreed to hire residents in this particular area. It's going to mean that we're going to have blue-collar jobs, we're going to be competitive. It's near the expressway system. So this piece, the economic development piece, has been the piece that I've been most proud of, and I'm sure the citizens of Atlanta, because it's something in action. You can see it. It's a part of the process. And it's something that we took from the early stage, embryonic stages, from economic development report. It was a theory, and now we have implemented. And that's what government is all about, being able to sit down, have a brain trust, talk about ideas and concepts, ideals, and then bring that together.
You know, it's a kiss of death to some black politicians to have a close relationship with the business community. How do you manage to pull it off, keep your base, yet work well with the business community?
Because I move around all the time. I try to spend a third of my time with the business community. I try to spend a third of my time in the black community. And I try to spend a third of my time with community groups. And I just kind of work at it. I move around trying to find out.
The first thing was African-American entrepreneurship. Marvin was always pushing for particularly young business folks, African-Americans, to step out, to be bold. And I think that he established that mold of that, his personal stamp of approval in pushing entrepreneurs is the greatest thing that we have that shows today. And we owe that to Marvin Arrington.
How do you balance all those roles? Full-time politician, full-time family man, full-time attorney. I mean, you wear a lot of hats.
Well, you know, it's very demanding, but I would like to think that I'm organized and know what I'm going to do. Have good staff people. I have excellent law partners, people very supportive of me. And it get a little hectic at times. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm giving my family enough time, and that's very important to me.
Marvin was a family man. He was a family man. Family was very important to him. He did a good job of balancing his life, professional, public life with the personal life. 3 things I think you need as you go through life, and I call them 3 F's. You need family, you need friends, and you need faith.
Both my parents equally worked. I guess my dad juggled having 2 jobs, you would say, being an elected official and being an attorney, but no more so than my mother, working in education and being busy with all of her community and civic work as well. But he was very much involved in everything that we did, and we were able to have access to, and summer camps and piano and, all the things that you pour into your children and enrich them.
They were loving, caring parents. They, made sure we had everything that we needed, but not everything that we wanted. And so I think there is, good in knowing that. I think it teaches humility. But they were always there for, extracurricular activities, helping with homework, anything and everything.
Between July 1979 and May 1981, the Atlanta child murders, during which Black children, mostly boys, were killed, struck fear throughout the city and infamously stained Atlanta's reputation on the national scene. As a city leader and the father of 2 young children, Marvin Arrington Sr. had to face the nightmare head on.
The Atlanta child murders, a series of murders where Atlanta's most vulnerable and vibrant were being hunted in the streets and being left in fields. And it took a very long time for Atlanta to admit that these Black children, particularly Black boys, were being murdered as such.
It became a question, at first, of race, but then it became a question of class. These are throwaway children. No child is a throwaway. And Marvin reminded people of that. And not many people were saying that back then when this first happened. A lot of people were just, oh, that's over there. Oh, they don't watch their kids. Oh. And he reminded people, these are our children.
The Atlanta child murders certainly was a scary time. 1979 to 80, I remember, the bodies were being dumped in the Chattahoochee River. And we would catch the school bus in the morning and we would have to cross over the Chattahoochee River. And so that would always be a time where, everyone would kind of hunker down in their seats and get quiet. And, it was because we were aware. Our parents made us aware, the news made us aware, everyone made us aware. So there was a heightened sense of security.
At that particular time in our city's history, in our country's history, he served a yeoman's job and task of keeping stability with the missing and murdered children situation that we all had to go through as elementary school kids. And, having these father figures like Marvin Arrington Sr. really gave us a certain type of comfort in a very scary time in our lives as young people in elementary and middle school.
By the mid-1980s, Black leadership was firmly in place at City Hall. African Americans had more say on Atlanta's city policy and the local economy. But Marvin Arrington showed no signs of slowing down. He went to work in increasing city contracts to minority businesses, particularly in the field of construction. This was the moment the city of Atlanta's skyline began transforming. By the late 80s, the skyline showcased the Omni Complex, Georgia World Congress Center, a new interstate highway system, and Atlanta's public bus and rail system known as MARTA.
His ebullience, his bravado, and his smarts. He was brilliant. So he was always knowing what is the next step, how to navigate legislation and get things done around the city.
He was the ideas man, he was the strategy man, and then he would execute the plan that all of these other folks would take the credit for.
But he was the person who came up with a lot of ideas on how you renovate Atlanta, and he orchestrated the legislation and the council support to get stuff done that other people were thinking of or talking about, but he would get it done.
For so many of us, especially growing up, you don't know what all the titles mean. You just know that they are important. And for me growing up, knowing that Marvin Arrington was city council president was as important as knowing that somebody was mayor.
Marvin Arrington might have been behind the scenes in one way, but really when you're president of the city council, everybody knows your name because everything comes through the council and through you. The problem with that is you don't get the credit because the mayor signs off on it, and then that's the end of it. But I think people who know the city and know the background of the city know the power that the city council president held.
He used his power as a politician to, just navigate the political process. He controlled the committees, he controlled what happened in Atlanta, and then he controlled what he expected developers to do for people, and he just shaped the agenda for the city.
Anytime you give a mayor credit for Atlanta's place in America and the world, you have to think about the person that organized the legislative side of that effort. And I think that that was just because of his courage. Big intellect, big heart.
But the truth of the matter is, when you grow up in a community like Marvin Arrington came from, you see all of that. And you learn to build community with all of that. That's a very important set of skills to have when you're dealing in the legal field and when you're dealing as a public servant.
You can have leadership and you can build progressive governments around definitive positions on public policy. And that's the way he's always been. And that's a remarkable history and a remarkable testament to how he was reared and the heart of the human being.
Pragmatic, very pragmatic. He understood how the game was played. And it's like an old pool shark who lets you go knock in 5 balls to think that you're winning. And because he knows his level of skill, he'll let you get everything but the black one off the table. But when you're caught slipping, you know you lost. You didn't get around it.
Marvin Arrington was the one who said when the Atlanta Zoo was an embarrassment worldwide, animals were dying, the facility was horrible. He was the one who stepped up and said, City of Atlanta's got to get out of controlling this. We need to get professional people in here, and we need to get money to make this zoo into the world-class place it should be. And he spearheaded that effort to change the Atlanta Zoo into Zoo Atlanta.
Marvin Arrington understands that great cities of the world provide their citizens with an environment that is conducive to cultural growth, enrichment, and an appreciation of the wonders and beauty of nature.
Marvin has been the main man, and Marvin has been our inspiration, the guy that came up with the original idea of using the Recreation Authority and forming a separate body to run the zoo to make the thing work. And there have been a lot of false starts, been a lot of bad publicity, a lot of bad things happen. And if Marvin hadn't been there saying, Bob, we're going to make it happen, we wouldn't be here today. People react to bad things instead of positive things. And Marvin was working with us all along before it became a bad thing. He was ready to fix the zoo and make it right before the rest of the world knew it was a bad thing. So he was in there thinking and planning before things got really bad.
So I guess more than anything, Marvin Arrington sort of inherited your position after you left the city council. I'm wondering, you know that job, you know the pressures and the problems. What sort of job do you think he's done as city council president?
Well, I think Marvin has done a fantastic job. Marvin, first of all, you have to realize that managing the affairs of 18 council members and working the legislative part of government, city government, between the executive side of government is a tremendous job. And it's a tremendous job of balancing and developing legislative proposals, leading the city council into policy-making decisions. He's provided the needed balance and the kinds of skills legislative skills needed for the city of Atlanta.
There was his way, his style, his class, his cachet that was most memorable about him. Again, from the bow ties, the bow ties always got me. You know, I mean, I never saw a black man wear as many bow ties back in the day. You know, especially in a non-formal way. You know, Marvin Arrington was a racial pioneer and a political pioneer, but he also had this street savvy. He introduced me to his inner working, his inner circle. But then, I tell you what opened my eyes. See a brother like that, who was a first-class, top-shelf attorney with his own law office. So he went from the streets where that club was to the suites where his law office was, all in one day. I'd never seen a man travel that diversity in one day and in one lifetime, really. To see a Marvin Arrington just as cool as the other side of the pillow, but also tough, polished, bow with a bow tie.
What is this they said in the Bible? Put your bucket down where there's water. So Marvin put his bucket down where there was water. In the ghettos, in the streets. He talked the language.
It's important to understand how to walk in a corporate boardroom and how to walk into a barbershop and bankhead the same way. Okay? The reason why that's important is because you become a bridge and a connector. And that's something that Arrington did without effort. He did it effortlessly, right? He could walk into these various rooms and be just as respected as anyone else in those buildings. And it's something that I try to mimic in my own personal life, because what good is it to be successful and to have platforms and to have influence if you can't be proud of the community that you came from or uplift the community that produced you?
I just want Tommy to know that if we were not in session, I did not have my business suit on, I'd take him on one-on-one.
The distinguished president of the Atlanta City Council, Marvin Arrington, is here to bring greetings from the city as well. President Arrington.
Y'all come on and clap for me.
Yeah. Marvin was always a unique political creature, in that if you were walking around the streets of Atlanta with Marvin, people would roll down their windows to shout at him, "Hey, Bo, how you doing?" And he almost always knew them instinctively. He was a person that really moved from champagne to sneakers very well, whether that was in the white business community or working out in black neighborhoods with civic groups. That ease of really just loving people, all kinds of people, is one of the things that I think is a unique character of Marvin's, that has made this community very much a healthier place because of it.
One of Marvin Arrington's unique qualities was his ability to navigate every part of the city. Any neighborhood, any section of the city, any council district, any ward of the city. And I believe that he had that ability to walk with kings and not lose the common touch because he loved Atlanta and Atlanta loved him.
I mean, he's got many friends in all kinds of circles, and I think that's one key to his success politically. He's very accessible and is always a regular guy. I know him now. He's the same way now that he was when I knew him playing tennis out of Washington Park. Really hadn't changed that much. He just got a little bit more money and more weight.
His political acumen was only matched by his legal skills, because legislation gets formed in two places, in the suites or in the streets. So you have a guy who can match both of those, right? He can walk into a courtroom if necessary and sue you, right? And he, as president of the city council, he could go and create legislation that could stand a constitutional muster.
Marvin was very supportive, not only took care of his responsibilities as the president of the city council, which he had grown to, but he also took the responsibility of being a good lawyer, and he knew how to differentiate between the two, much of what you don't see today.
I thought that he handled his legal career and his political career very well. He was very cautious about keeping the two separate. I really called myself his lead litigation associate. So I had a number of opportunities to represent him. I would end up representing his constituents. He would always keep that separate from the firm. And I just thought that he handled his law firm very well, and I thought that he handled his political career very well. He did not mix the two.
Arrington was an exceptional criminal lawyer. He was one of the grade A criminal lawyers that people came to when they were really in trouble. I was around him all the time. I was the girl Friday on the outside of the door. My office was literally outside his door. And wherever he was going to a meeting, however he was Patrice. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot about various facets of law. I learned a lot about powerful people and power brokering. I learned about giving back. I learned about public speaking and being there for the community. I mean, he really did inspire me as a very young person.
He makes a statement with everything he does. He is intentional. And by him doing that, he opens the door for other people. It's like he puts his foot in the door and says, okay, come on, I opened it. Now all you gotta do is walk in and build upon it and open it for someone else.
In his legal profession, Marvin Arrington also made strides. In 1989, he partnered with the legendary civil rights leader Donald Lee Hollowell. Nicknamed Mr. Civil Rights, Hollowell was a respected civic leader in Atlanta. His tireless work placed him as one of the top civil rights attorneys in Georgia. In both his private practice and his federal job, Donald Hollowell worked to train a younger generation of civil rights attorneys, including Marvin Arrington.
When the civil rights movement came about in the early 60s, and I was a young student at Clark Atlanta University and got a chance to see one of the finest lawyers in American history, Donald L. Hollowell, who had graduated from Lane College in Jackson, Tennessee. English major, articulate, bright. And I would cut classes to go down and sit in the courtroom just to see Mr. Hollowell take care of his business. And that's when I knew that I wanted to go to law school.
In 1989, the mentor and the mentee joined forces and formed Arrington and Hollowell, specializing in corporate bonds, labor relations, litigation, and workers' compensation.
The fact that he worked with Donald Hollowell, too, that was a marriage made in heaven.
He built Arrington and Hollowell, which for years was one of the 5 or 6 most important law firms for people of color in America in terms of their success, size, and stature.
Everybody who came through the doors of Arrington and Hollowell, there was an expectation that you were going to work hard and that you were going to go on and be bigger than the firm. That was his expectation. And I think you will find that those associates during that time, myself included, have gone on, and we've always kept that in mind, that when we are in tight situations and wondering what we need to do, one of the first questions we ask is, what would Mr. Arrington do? His impact on the city of Atlanta, I think only history will tell. But the one thing he did do, he showed that an African-American man could build a business law firm in the white community and do well. He showed that African-Americans could run city government ethically.
He made certain that young African-American attorneys got a chance to practice in a firm at the highest level of practice. So pushing excellence, working with corporate clients, that type of thing, and that didn't exist.
He was a pioneer in terms of blacks being able to get into law school.
He was a shameless promoter of young African-American lawyers. The first time I ever heard anybody talk about the legal community in Georgia was really with Marvin Arrington. And he was lamenting the fact that there were only at one point in time in the early 70s, I believe that there were 100 lawyers of African-American descent in the entirety of the state of Georgia. Today you have law firms that may have, you could put together a couple of major law firms and find that many African-American lawyers.
One of his favorite quotes was from this guy down in Montgomery. if you Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. If you see a good fight, get in it. He didn't mind getting in a good fight. And many times, other people were the beneficiaries of the fight. It wasn't for him, it was for other people. I've been disappointed that he did not get the credit that I think he deserved. Marvin was a bridge builder, as opposed to others who relied strictly on one community or the other. Marvin bridged the two communities, and that has helped make this city a great city.
He's a very serious public servant. He takes seriously his responsibility. And I think there's another reason I feel very good about Marvin is that, we often say to young people who are born in humble circumstances that you can be born in the ghetto, but the ghetto doesn't have to be in you. And that the ghetto doesn't have to mean that you are forever forbidden from reaching new heights and achieving significantly in your community. Marvin has done that. He's not left his community. He simply returned to serve his community and to put back into the community what it gave him in terms of toughness and in terms of fair play and in terms of hard work.
I can't stress enough how much he meant symbolically to people who were born and raised in Atlanta. Marvin has been a history maker for us in this city. And, I think for those of us born in Atlanta, it is just the blessing that our number was called to be born into this community. Because we grew up in a community where we saw people changing the world. And it never occurred to any of us that we couldn't do the same.
I'm only aware of only one legitimate politics, that which I practice every day. I believe it's the responsibility of every elected official, particularly black elected officials, to provide leadership and constituent service and represented care about those who elect him. In other words, and I quote, dance with the one who has brought you.
Marvin, as a lawyer, I think the way he practiced law is pretty much the way Marvin exhibited himself as a person, as a politician, as a lawyer. He's a person who's always stretching. He's almost a parallel to the city of Atlanta. Marvin has taken himself both personally and professionally into every new area that he has been able to identify. And I think just like the city of Atlanta, just as the city is growing and stretching its boundaries and stretching its potential, a lot of that is exhibited in Marvin Arrington.
The International Olympic Committee.
In 1990, with the visionary efforts of Maynard Jackson, the legislative efforts of Marvin Arrington, the diplomatic efforts of Andrew Young, and so many more, the city of Atlanta won the bid to host the 1996 Olympic Summer Games. The Olympic Games would cement Atlanta's place as an international city and a tourist destination.
It was very successful, in which he helped a great deal. We raised $2.5 billion of private money, no government money. 41% of that money went to minority and female-owned companies. It was a tremendous success. It was the largest Olympics ever, and there hadn't been an Olympics as big as ours since.
In terms of presenting Atlanta to the world, the 1996 Olympics was some of the best pageantry and pomp and circumstance of how that works. It was beautiful. I mean, when you would be out amongst people, you heard every language being spoken, you saw tourists. But in terms of just culture and image, in terms of how Atlanta was franchised for world consumption in terms of how it was marketed. I mean, it was one of the greatest feats of showmanship that had been seen in terms of what a city could do.
When Atlanta got the Olympic Games for 1996, then that even brought in more international people. They began to look at and explore opportunities in Atlanta. And that was the thing, that outlook and the concern of Atlanta continuing to grow and prosper was something that helped Atlanta become an international city.
It may have been Frederick Douglass who said around 1863, power conceives nothing but out of demand. Never has and never will. I was the vice chairperson of the Olympics Committee. And whatever they decided for the other community, I've always raised the issue.
Marvin's role in helping us get the Olympics, which was very important, will continue to play a very large role in our preparation for the Games, now that we've been successful in winning the Games. And as vice chairman of Mayoga, he will play a critical role in overseeing our construction contracts and making sure that our venue plan is in the best long-term interest of the community.
The Olympics was not technically awarded to the city. It was awarded to this nonprofit organization. But there was so much for us to do in approving permits and any number of things to get the city prepared, street improvements, so all kinds of things that we had to do with a fairly short deadline that wasn't movable. So it was important that we do things swiftly, and he was always there making sure things went through the committees in a timely way.
Before the Olympics came to Atlanta, building up to the Olympics, decisions that were made to invest in various parts of our city and to see growth and see housing and to see jobs and companies locate here that ultimately fed families, to see the revitalization of public housing in Atlanta. A lot of that was on his watch in some shape, form, or fashion, or he had a voice in that, or advised people such as myself and others on how to do it better and do it well. So he is definitely someone who put an imprint on City Hall as a council president, and it will be there forever.
Atlanta is an international city. It is an exceedingly prosperous city, exceedingly diverse city, where people of all races and stripes and creeds, colors, and all of that can live and prosper here. And all of that is made possible through the legacy and the contributions of Marvin Arrington, being open-minded, being fair, knowing that you are just as good as everybody else, and putting that mantra out there.
Marvin Arrington is one of the giants, one of the architects, one of the engineers who made Atlanta what it is today. So when people come here and ride and see this thriving, beautiful city, they have to understand that it didn't just happen overnight.
I don't think that we fully appreciate the contributions that Marvin Arrington made to the city and to the state. He was not bashful about speaking up. And you know, it's difficult to speak up, particularly if you have a voice that is different from the others. But that speaking up is what makes us great as a people. And Marvin Arrington was one that would speak up.
As the 90s arrived, Atlanta ranked among the top U.S. cities in Black businesses and Black home ownership. The city also saw an expansion of residents moving and working outward to nearby suburbs. This is all happening while the city's population is ballooning.
You can look around Atlanta today. You know, that's his legacy, okay? That's one of his legacies in terms of making Black-owned businesses viable, in terms of the Atlanta airport, in terms of capital improvement projects for water and sewer, in terms of neighborhoods, in terms of development, from Buckhead to Southwest to Peoplestown to Reynoldstown. There is not one project that did not have Marvin Arrington's input in it. Not one.
Atlanta's rise or its image as a Black Mecca, it's not a myth. It is real. And so when we talk about, the opportunity to have a decent job, good housing, an opportunity for politics, Atlanta becomes a hub because you have several city officials and state officials that are Black that have been put into office. And so when we talk about, the Black Mecca tradition, that is the manifestation of how we understand the Black Mecca.
It was the Black Mecca for education. It was the Black Mecca for opportunity. It was the Black Mecca. And people were attracted to that. They heard that slogan and they came. People came.
With Atlanta securing its place as a tourist destination, business and commerce hub, and internationally recognized community, the ever-ambitious Marvin Arrington set his sights high in representing the city he helped to transform. In 1997, he decided to run for mayor.
Marvin! Who do we want? Marvin!
No one know Atlanta like Marvin Arrington.
Make the change. Vote Marvin Arrington mayor.
I believe his bid for mayor was out of his love for this city and wanting this city to be great and wanting the city to be greater.
He was destined to be the mayor of the city of Atlanta.
Facing an incumbent mayor, Marvin Arrington went to work in campaigning against the admired Bill Campbell.
That matchup was phenomenal because you had two guys who understood politics, two who've been on the city council, one council president. For those of us who are political scientists, political watchers, it was one of the greatest. I mean, I talk about it in terms of like it's been an Ali Frazier fight. It was one of the greatest political matches that we've seen.
Marvin Arrington was gangster as a candidate. He spoke boldly. And don't get it twisted, many people resonated with that.
When Campbell was in office, during his first term, there were a lot of irregularities that had taken place. Marvin felt like the city needed to get back to basics.
Marvin made the decision to run against Mayor Campbell at the end of Mayor Campbell's first term. And Marvin really was doing quite well in that race. And Mayor Campbell, quite frankly, was a popular mayor, which really says a lot about Marvin's bona fides and how well he was liked and respected around town.
It's always difficult to take on an incumbent. Despite the incumbency, he ran an extraordinarily competitive race.
I do remember the energy. It was high is, I guess, not the right word. I guess you can almost cut it with a knife. The energy, contentious. I guess it's probably a polite word, of saying what it was. And there were definitely camps. There were definitely camps on one side or the other.
Bill, a great guy from North Carolina, is not going to beat our local hometown hero. We were pulling for the guy who was just Atlanta's own.
Two big, heavy hitters going at it. And I remember at the time there was a feeling that perhaps Marvin should have waited after Bill had finished, and then the door would have flung open for him. But he decided to run and made it a very aggressive campaign for the heart of Atlanta, because I remember people having mixed feelings. On the one hand, people always felt that Marvin should and be the mayor of Atlanta. And then at the same time, some folks more in the black community felt that maybe he should have waited till Bill got finished because they didn't like seeing two strong black men going after each other.
Time was not right and the situation wasn't right. I thought he was so unfairly put upon. That was a nasty, dirty political race among black folks. And it was black folks against black folks. It was colorism. It was petty politics. And I just think he paid a heavy price.
We were doing fine in the race. When I joined the campaign, we were down at 30 points. We had gotten up to close to 50 points, and it was 3 weeks out. And Marvin did a radio interview, and somehow Maynard Jackson became part of the conversation. And he made a statement about Maynard that wasn't pleasant, and it upset the whole city.
When the moderator said, passing, what do you mean? And Bo caught himself and said, well, he was passing out encyclopedias. Well, that didn't go off right. The people who heard what he said took it to mean that while we were here on the front line for civil rights, Maynard was passing and using his skin tone, straight hair, whatever you want to call it, to his benefit. And that just didn't come across right.
Marvin, I think, was in the midst of a heated debate, and I think he said something he wished maybe he should not have said, and provided a significant opening. And the opening politically was that it brought Maynard Jackson into the race. And that hurt because Maynard Jackson was well respected, and Maynard Jackson's legacy was solid. And Maynard Jackson in and of himself was a force. And you just didn't want to lock horns with him. And so he put himself in a position where he had to lock horns with Mayor Campbell and with Mayor Jackson, and that hurt.
Basically, he gave Maynard Jackson the microphone. And when Maynard gets the microphone, it's all over. On any subject, you give Maynard a microphone, it'll be over with. So he didn't have a microphone before. It was all on Bill's microphone. Became Maynard's microphone, and that was what the big downfall for us, I think.
If that election had been held the day before that radio program, I think Marvin would have won. But it was after that radio program. It wasn't Marvin versus Bill Campbell. It was Marvin versus Maynard Jackson.
I think Marvin would have been elected mayor, and he would have been a great mayor.
He made a mistake. He talked about Maynard Jackson. I love Marvin, I love Maynard Jackson, but you don't talk about a Morehouse man. That's his mistake. That's why he ain't the mayor of this town now. You don't with a Morehouse man, okay?
He shouldn't have said it. Maynard was a great leader, but that's Marvin. If Marvin is a street fighter, you jump on him, he's gonna jump on you. And that's what he did.
I often think about it. Had Marvin been elected mayor, Atlanta really would have truly understood the greatness of Marvin Arrington as mayor, because he had been there. He had a hand in every major capital improvement project in Atlanta. But fate had it that he didn't get it, so.
Arrington says he will take some time off to get some much-needed rest, and then he will return to his private law practice. This is the first time in 27 years he has been out of public office, because this is the first race he's ever lost.
After his tough defeat to Mayor Campbell, Arrington lent his time to his law practice, working hard for his clients while grooming in the next generation of lawyers.
I think that the legacy of Marvin in the legal community is really how he has championed at every level people being involved in the legal profession, whether those are being as lawyers or, for that matter, as judges.
As it relates to the practice of law, he taught me that you have to focus more on the business of law. That there are a lot of good people who know how to practice law, but they do not know how to run a law practice. So he taught me operationally and functionally how to run a law firm.
Many lawyers, many judges have followed the path of a Marvin Arrington. He was a leader in terms of reaching back to help others who were maybe not as fortunate as others were. He helped the least of these become somebodies. Marvin has set a tone for this town, particularly those of color. Marvin helped poor folks, black kids who wanted to be somebody say, follow me, I got you.
His history has always been one of inclusion. There are some people, when they get to a station in life, have what I call the drawbridge mentality. I've got it. The way that I advance myself is to draw the bridge to keep anybody else from getting what I got. And Marvin was just the opposite of that, the polar opposite of that, that he would try to include everybody in and encourage everybody to come get what I've got, because there's so much that we can do to help our communities if you do it. And he'll be forever remembered for that, and I will personally be forever thankful for it.
Down to 85, wanna take a drive. Got my driver's license, but I don't know how to drive. My mom picks us up, too young for the club, but I know a place in town that'll give us the same buzz. Cascade, where we stay.
You look at the corridor, the house that we're sitting in right now, this neighborhood. Congressman John Lewis is up the street. Ambassador Young is maybe 2 minutes away from Marvin Arrington Sr. Maybe 2 minutes away from Marvin Arrington Sr. is Reverend Joseph Laurie. You make another right, you would see Hank Aaron's home. You go a little further, you would see Mayor Franklin's home. You come into my neighborhood, you'd see Mayor Bottom's home. All within about 10 minutes. I don't think that that's a mistake. I think it's because we were able to see people do things and achieve excellence.
Going back to the time when Atlanta was a smaller place, it was Collier Heights and it was Cascade and Hunter Hills and these places that our families came together and grew out of. And Cascade Southwest area was a central component of that. And as Atlanta has grown, it has become even more symbolic of just this place that so many of us, whether physically, mentally, or emotionally, still call home. And again, Marvin Arrington represented that. It was a place that African Americans in Atlanta moved to when they moved from the core of the west side of the city. They began to navigate further out.
There's something in the water, for sure, in Southwest Atlanta that we're drinking. It's obviously city water, but I don't know what's in the pipes over there, but it gives a certain type of energy to the DNA and RNA that gives us a resilience, gives us a commitment to excellence across many platforms. Marvin Arrington Sr. was always one of the most iconic to me in a very interesting and unique way because his home was on our Pride and Joy Street, Cascade, and every time you ride down Cascade, you could point to the left or to the right and say, oh, that's where Marvin Arrington lives. That's where the council president lives. It's a stately, wonderful, beautiful home, Southern home, and it just gave you the feeling that you know that you can achieve the same thing or better as a young person, as a teenager. It's like, I can do that.
At the turn of the century, just as Marvin Arrington was set to retire from public life, another calling came his way.
He didn't ask to be judge. I called him up and I said, Marvin, I want to appoint you Superior Court judge. He said, well, you know, I'm about retired. And I said, I don't care whether you're retired or not. I said, they need somebody down there like you that understands how tough it is for a kid to grow up on the streets and how important it is for that kid to get a break so it doesn't ruin the rest of his life. And that integrity is what I wanted to impart through Marvin to the folks that came before him, and he did a wonderful job in it.
He was a great jurist. He distinguished himself on that bench and was very successful in some of his rulings.
God has a very interesting way of knowing a greater plan for us. And when he became a judge, I think that that was the absolute perfect fit to have him on the bench, someone who was firm, fair, compassionate, thoughtful, sitting on the bench and dishing out justice, but also understanding the plight of our people, African-American men, African-American women. That judgeship was divine. And I think that that is a part of his lasting legacy, that he will be remembered for what he did on the bench during the years that he served.
Small drug offenders, in the first instance, that we thought was worth saving. We just cannot continue to warehouse all these young men. We don't have the facilities, the resources, and it appeared to us that we could take them in, help them get a GED or get a high school diploma, and then apply to college. And that's a way of helping them be a better person.
Seeing him in court and being proud that here is this Black man who helped to integrate Emory Law School and who had to originally leave to go to a different state because he couldn't go to law school in the very state that he loved. And he was sitting as a jurist in the largest trial court in Georgia is something to be extremely proud of.
He is a professional and a legal scholar. At heart, he's a servant. He's a servant leader.
Marvin Arrington's tenacity and his prowess as both a politician and a legal scholar and a judge. I mean, he's combined the two. Many go into politics and go into business success. He's been a legal, brilliant mind who will also excelled as a city council president. So he's had the law, be it creating law or practicing law, has been his defining essence.
Appointed in 2002 as Fulton County Superior Court judge, the Honorable Marvin Arrington Sr. brought his passion to the bench.
All right. Superior Court of Fulton County is now in session. Honorable Judge Marvin S. Arrington Sr. presiding. Court will now come to order.
Thank you very much, and please be seated.
But it was one story in 2008 that put him in the national spotlight.
African Americans have been debating for years how tough to be on young Black men. But for one judge in Atlanta, that debate is over.
All rise.
Judge Marvin Arrington has had it.
People are shooting people, robbing people, dropping out of school.
Same people in his Atlanta courtroom over and over.
90% of you all are Afro-Americans.
Arrington's offended and embarrassed.
I wonder sometimes what in the world the Dr. King knows and all of them died for.
He thinks the tough love is long overdue. As a kid, Arrington himself was a bit of a thug, the sort of kid he often now sees in court. Family and teachers set him straight.
I was just hanging out being one of the boys. And one day that light clicked on. I didn't want to be one of the boys.
Arrington's now trying to turn around others.
Got a short life, man, and try to make something out of it.
But Arrington has also taken it a step further. First, he cleared his courtroom of all white people to chew out Black defendants in private, in what he now admits was a mistake. Critics howled.
Because all I was trying to say to young people, hey, we are for you. Get yourself together.
I recall when, as judge, he cleared the courtroom of everyone but just young Black men or Black men. And when I heard about it, I said, hell, that's classic Marvin. I said, that's can't say how I want to say it, but I said, that's some good stuff there. That's what I thought. And when there was this backlash, I couldn't understand it. Here's a man who's a judge who took the bully pulpit he had at the moment, he was never afraid to use his bully pulpit, and to do something with that bully pulpit that he thought was gonna help somebody and make a difference. And that's what he did.
And I called him up and I said, Marvin, you did exactly the right thing. You did what I want you to do. You wanted to talk to those kids and tell them, listen, you're just not a case before me. You're a human being, and I've been where you've been, and I've been on the streets you've been in, and I'm here to tell you that you can make a difference, but you got to straighten that. You cannot keep on like that. And I thought the criticism was unwarranted because it was exactly what I knew Marvin would do.
Does it shock me that he asked lawyers, including white lawyers, to leave the courtroom for him to talk to what I knew he considered to be his people? Absolutely not. In fact, I commend him for it if he did it. I have no issue with him doing that. I'm sure that there are people who might, but they don't know him. He came up during a time when you had to make certain things happen, and he just simply felt that young black men and young black women needed to handle their business a certain way in order to keep themselves out of the criminal justice system.
Arrington continued his work as a passionate court judge until 2012, when he officially retired.
He's always bounced back from adversity. That's his story. Nothing has put Marvin Arrington down. Nothing. He still rises. He's like the ashes of Atlanta, still rising.
So I think a lot of people just take for granted this just happened. But it didn't happen just that easily. It happened with great sacrifice. Because the other thing that you have to realize is that even when you are building this beautiful thing we call Atlanta, this wonderful mosaic and tapestry, everybody ain't gonna like you. His management of city council is what make him legendary. And I'm so glad that the city council saw fit to name the city council chambers after him, because the fact of the matter is we haven't had another city council president like him. Won't be another one like him. He was a standard bearer for that job.
Anybody who loves Atlanta, Georgia more than Marvin Arrington. And he fought for it and will continue to fight for it and did not back down from anybody. Black, white, poor, rich, it didn't matter. He loved and would fight for Atlanta and poor people in Atlanta in particular. He did it, really, truly did it his way.
And ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you this, that I think this chamber will have a long, long, hard journey to live up to the legacy that Marvin Arrington has created for us.
You are Council President Emeritus of the city of Atlanta, and now we are honoring you by putting your name on a chamber that you have graced us with your service. Thank you so much.
1, 2, 3. All right.
It is a pleasure, it is an honor to be here today to pay homage to a great leader of our city, a great man in our community, a great public servant, someone who thought it not robbery to wash the feet of others through his public service. He ruled this chamber like mighty Zeus in Olympus. And it was a chamber that we aspire to the highest for the least of these. And it is his example that made this an august, mystical body of public service. We are forever in your debt, and we will ever aspire to your example, sir.
He spearheaded countless initiatives
which contributed to Atlanta's advancement as an inclusive and welcoming city, offering equal opportunity to all. The City of Atlanta salutes the Honorable Marvin S. Arrington Sr.'s meaningful leadership and service, and we are proud to celebrate the renaming of the Atlanta City Council chambers in his honor.
Each and every time I and the public yet to come, those still on their way in the future, when they come into this chamber, they're going to see the name of a great Atlantan, a great man. So congratulations.
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the President Emeritus of the Atlanta City Council, the Honorable Marvin S. Arrington Sr.
There's no words in Webster Dictionary that could adequately express my appreciation for this great honor. I'll forever be indebted to you. I think about the record by one of the top singers who said, "Change gonna come." Oh, yes, it is. When I came here in Safe State, we had separate water fountains, and I refused to drink out of them, and separate restroom facilities. I refused to do that. I said, we're going to integrate and be accounted for because we are constitutional students. But we just kept hanging in there saying things are going to get better. And they did, in fact, get better. This is a great city. This is a great day. I'm glad to be a part of this. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for this highly recommendation. I'll forever be indebted. Thank you very much.
I think Marvin Arrington, my dad, has been relevant for the past 4 decades because he cares about Atlanta. He cares about himself. He cares about the city, the people in the city and around the city. And, you know, the lesson that, you know, he always taught me was that to whom much is given, much is expected.
One of the great lessons I think we can all learn from Judge Arrington is to love your community. Love your community. Love all of it, because no one has a perfect community. I don't care who you are or where you live or where you're from, you don't come from perfection. Love your community. And when your community has an area where it lacks or there's a deficiency, don't kick your community down. Become the individual, become the mentor, become the catalyst in order to transform that narrative. And that is what Judge Arrington committed himself to.
Making my mom, the story of the man who wouldn't stay in his place. I saw injustices and I just wouldn't yield to it. I just kept fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, and I'm glad that I did.
Marvin's impact is going to be more locally because he was born and reared here, and he loves Atlanta. And one of his books was a blueprint for the success of Atlanta. And his heart is devoted to Atlanta.
Then there's this art of reinvention. There are not many people who have long-lasting careers in various areas. So this is a man who is a partner at a prominent law firm. That was one career. And then to serve as city council president, that's another career. And then to have a long tenure on the bench, that's another career. And to do them all well, it can't be said about a lot of people, and that should be celebrated.
If you needed a best friend, you need somebody like Marvin Arrington, because he will always be with you, and it'll be fun to be with him the whole time.
The biggest legacy to me Marvin has left is that it doesn't matter where you come from, it's where you're going to. The Marvin Arrington, with his life, has shown anybody can be successful if you literally put your mind to it, get the education, work hard, and then give back. His legacy is one of being a participant, but also being a leader.
Original A. Hey, shawty, this native dialect, that's just some shit that we say. I'm always on display. Outside candy coated, inside parquet. Butter, country crock when we been a corner. That bitch slick pimpin' when I run up on her. She say I make her sick, give a bitch pneumonia. I get the party started from here to California.